Buen Camino future pilgrims of the Camino de Santiago. I'm so excited for you to go on this incredible adventure. It's honestly one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And I just know you're gonna have the best time. But in this video, I'm just gonna give you a few of my top tips, things that I wish I knew before I left for the Camino, and things that would have made my journey a lot easier and more enjoyable had I known them before. First, just to give you guys a bit of an overview of my Camino experience. So I arrived in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France on the 1st of April, and I set out on my 800-kilometer hike the next day on April 2nd. For me, it was 4 weeks walking across northern Spain, starting at the French border in the Pyrenees, finishing in Santiago de Compostela on about April the 30th. It was indescribable just how beautiful this experience is, and something you have to do yourself to really understand why. I definitely had a lot of challenges on the way and a ton of just incredible things to happen as well, which have really shaped these tips that I'm going to give you. So let's get started. So the first tip, pack smart, not heavy. And this probably sounds so obvious, but honestly, about 50% of us get this wrong, myself included. They suggest that you only have about 10 to 15% your body weight, and over weeks of walking, you'll see why. I stupidly had about 25% my body weight, which is not a flex. It was so stupid of me. I did manage to send on about 5 kilograms worth of stuff to Santiago about 10 days into my journey, which is actually really easy to do. You can do that if you go to post office and you send your things along. But yeah, you really don't need as much as you think. I have a really good friend who I met on the Camino, Ruby, who was only carrying about 3 kilograms worth of things, and she had an amazing time. She survived. So yeah, you can do it super lightly and have a better time as a result. Tip number 2, use the Buen Camino app or something similar. The apps are really handy, whether you want to be on your phone or not. They are really good to have. They show you loads of things such as what the stages are, accommodation, how many beds there are at each albergues, what food and water you can find along the way each day, how far you've gone each day. It's really good. Number 3, now this is one of my favorite ones, which I had no idea about before. Stay in donativos. Now donativos are an albergue. Albergues, by the way, are pilgrim hostels where you stay, but donativos are a special kind. They basically mean donation based, so they're often church run, and you just pay what you want to pay. They're just really authentic, really beautiful experiences where everyone's kind of like a family. You all cook together. I stayed in some really beautiful ones. I'll link a couple in the description. Number 4, put the phone away. So even though I just said how useful these apps are, you really don't need to be using your phone at all otherwise. The most beautiful part of the Camino is just disconnecting and just utilizing all that walking to just really connect with yourself and nature. It's just so meditative and just wonderful to have that experience. Honestly, if you have your phone out too regularly, you'll miss that major benefit. Number 5, do it your way. And honestly, this one is so important. Like, everyone is going on this journey alone. Maybe you're going with a friend or family member, but predominantly you're doing this journey alone, and you're gonna meet some amazing people on the way. There's gonna be a lot of times where you're unsure what you want to do based off other people you've met. It's so important to do the Camino at your pace, the pace you want to do, and do what feels right for you. That being said, if you meet people that you really want to stay with, I did on my journey. I met a really great group and I was with them for about 3 weeks, and it was amazing, and I don't regret that at all. And you know, people fall in love on the Camino. I met couples who'd met like in their first week, and they'd walked the whole thing together, and 3 months later now, I know they're still together. So yeah, do what feels right. Number 6, learn some Spanish. You can get by on the Camino just knowing English, but you're just not gonna have as good an experience. Honestly, it's so much more authentic if you can walk through these Spanish villages, these towns, and you'll see so many of them that you'll never have heard of before. If you can just speak to the locals and order coffee or breakfast in Spanish, it just feels like a much more immersive experience on the Camino by just knowing some Spanish. So yeah, get on Duolingo, learn the basics, and you'll be really grateful you did. Number 7 is to have hiking poles. Now I know that a lot of people who've hiked a lot before know how beneficial hiking poles are already. There are a lot of people on the Camino who thought, you don't need hiking poles. I thought that on my first hike when I did the West Highland Way in Scotland a few years ago, and honestly, I got hiking poles like midway through my journey and they saved my knees. They will take the pressure off your joints so much and you won't even know it to begin with, but your body will thank you. Number 8, have some rest days. They do say to have one rest day at least, every 10 days, maybe a week. It's what all the locals say about the Camino. They say, it's not all about the walking, it's about stopping in these beautiful places and, taking it all in, being meditative about your journey, what you've learned so far. If you just keep going, you're not really gonna have that time to reflect. But there are some beautiful places to stop. I would honestly suggest, if you're doing the Camino Frances, to stop in Pamplona. Burgos is stunning. On the northwest, in the last 2 weeks, when you're back in the mountains near Santiago, there's some really beautiful places to have a stop. But having a rest day is also really good for your feet, which I'll get onto in a few seconds. So number 9 is to embrace the pilgrim spirit. And honestly, being a pilgrim is, it feels really special. You just feel so free and so just one with nature, the world, and connected to everyone who's just living nomadically on the Camino. You will have the deepest conversations with people after like a minute of knowing them. And I really miss that because it's so hard to find that in day-to-day life. For some reason, you just get through the small talk when you're walking. You know everyone's on the Camino for an interesting reason. Every reason's an interesting reason, seriously. It could just be for the challenge, for the exercise, whatever, and it just connects you all so much. And I feel like the wider implications of that, the wider meaning of that is just really special. Number 10, don't stick to the exact pilgrim stages. So as I said about the apps, so Buen Camino, they split out the Camino into multiple stages. So I think the Camino Frances was, I think it was over about 35 stages. And at the end of each stage is basically saying where you should be at the end of that day. Most people stick to the stages for the first week or two, and then people get braver and they're like, I'll stay in this different place instead. And I would say if you can stay in the smaller towns before or after, the end stage points, you'll often have a more authentic experience. You have to do your research on the apps to see where might be good, or get advice from other pilgrims that you've met who've heard something about somewhere. Number 12, look after your feet. And oh God, this one was a big one for me. Honestly, about 2 weeks into the Camino, I thought I was gonna lose 2 toes. The people who were walking with me thought I was gonna lose my toes. My boots were just squishing my feet. Make sure you've just got the right boots, everything. Go for boots half a size bigger than your actual feet, because your feet will swell up so much when you're walking. The main reason people drop out of the Camino or any long hike is because their feet deteriorated to a point where they couldn't continue. Like, they could have been as fit as possible and their feet might let them down. Number 12, now this one's really important because don't go into the Camino stressing that you've not got everything prepared. Honestly, don't worry. You could turn up on the Camino with nothing and you would have everything you needed a few hours later. People always say the Camino provides anything that you don't have, you can pretty much find it every day. Yeah, don't stress yourself out. It will all work its way out when you're there. Tip number 13, this is my last tip. This is super important. It's just enjoy the journey. And as cliche as that might sound, it couldn't be more appropriate on the Camino. You've got your destination to get to every day, and then Santiago is your destination at the end. And it's really easy to just have that in mind and forget the reasons why you're doing this. And you look back and you just think, wow, that journey was just incredible. And the closer you get to Santiago, at the beginning you're thinking, oh God, it's a month away and I've got so much walking to do. And then when you get closer to the end destination, you're thinking, I want to start again. I just loved it so much. So just really embrace all the good moments, the hard times, which there will be some. And yeah, it's just all about the journey. And that's a really great metaphor just for life in general. So that is the end of my tips. I really hope that these help you guys, or at least get you excited for your journey. It's honestly the most amazing experience I've ever had. So yeah, I wish you the best journey ever. Please hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and I will see you in a future video. But until then, Buen Camino.